your biggest asset may become your biggest liability. And I think we figured that out, about the time that COVID hit. And it really allowed us some time to slow down long enough to say, okay, here's some things that we should be doing. Here's some things that we're not doing because we're just too busy. And that was one of those, is saying, okay, we should probably not.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yona Weiss, as always, and I am pleased and thrilled and excited and really grateful today to welcome Bryant Dawson to the show. Welcome to the show, Bryant. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Yona, for having me.
It is truly my pleasure. I'm grateful that we were able to connect a couple months ago back in Charlotte, North Carolina, and glad that you joined me on the show. Tell us a little bit, our listeners, about yourself and your background. As like everyone on the podcast, you're somehow involved in real estate. But besides for that, what is going on?
So I guess first and foremost, I'm a father of two, married to my high school sweetheart. I spent about 10 years straight in oil and gas industry, traveling all over the world doing that. Was really, really looking for a way to get some of my time freedom back. I was working 7 days a week, 12, 16-hour days, wow. And, 40 states, 9 countries, and, worth of travel. So I was really looking for a way to live life on my own terms. And that's what ultimately got me into real estate.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you then transitioned into what I would consider a type of real estate that doesn't exactly free up your time so much, which is fix and flipping single family houses.
That is correct. I was a project manager. I've always had a big construction background. So, my initial thought process was, well, I've still got to make money. And I didn't quite have the thing figured out about like how cash flow works and all that. So I just was focused on, okay, I'm going to replace my income with fixing and flipping houses. So dove headfirst into that. We've done just over 1,800 turns now on that side. So
that's pretty incredible. Okay. So 1,800 properties over the past 10 years or so. It's still, if you average that out, it's like 180 properties a year. That means you're cooking away like 5 properties a week.
Yeah. Our highest volume week, we turned 12 properties one week. So it's just a whole lot more work than what, I initially gave it credit for.
Right. But obviously with your project manager background, you were able to bring on teams and people to help. Bring on a whole construction management team. Obviously you're not doing all the fix and flips yourself. No one could scale and do it as much as that as possible. So tell me the transition, how it led from doing, 1,800 single family fix and flips. What did you learn from that? And to what point did it bring you to where you are today, which I know now you're still doing that business of the fix and flips. You still got that project going on, but simultaneously you transitioned to, to capital raising, to building this company, Ingram Capital, which you built, which is more focused on commercial properties, right? Multifamily, storage, et cetera.
Correct.
So walk me through what that was like. You're wearing the cash flow cap right now, right?
Yeah. Love the cash flow.
Yeah. Walk me through how that actually happened, because I know there's a lot of listeners out there that are like, yeah, I'd love to get into real estate and get my time freedom back, but I just don't know how. What's the process?
Sure. So, whenever I started, right, I didn't know a lot of the things. You don't know what you don't know, and until you don't know, you didn't know it, right? And as I started out, I just started with what I knew and what resources I had, and moved through that, and started gaining rental properties. And it wasn't until me and my wife and kids kind of worked this business, so we've all pushed very, very hard on it. Luckily, I have a very big support system at home on that side. They all wanted me home just as bad as I wanted to be home. So, once I got just over 100 SFRs on the rental side, I was like, I'm making as much money or making more money on my cash flow on the rental side than I am in my oil and gas project management business. So it's probably time to look at an exit on this. And at that point in time, we actually started a property management company because we couldn't find, we were already doing it ourselves. And our thought was, well, do we hire one or do we start one? And we really wanted to hire one, but couldn't find one that was doing all the construction piece that we were doing.
Right.
So we just started a property management company, maybe not the exact path that I would recommend everybody go down, but started the construction fix and flip business first, then the property management company, and then started doing a lot of consulting, over the years as we were fixing and flipping. Obviously, we had a lot of people asking how we're doing it. And, that kind of transitioned into a brokerage. So we own a brokerage as well on that. So,
Oh, wow. So that's focused on single family, the brokerage?
single family brokerage,
That's awesome.
land acquisitions and stuff. And, kind of the next step in that was the capital side. And, once we realized that, the single family real estate side was so heavily operational, it's just operationally heavy all the way
Sure.
around. We had about 570 or so single family properties under management that we either owned or managed for other people. And you just have to keep 30 maintenance guys going all the time around the clock to
Wow.
keep those things going.
Yeah, that's a huge payroll.
Yeah. And I was like, there's a better way, So obviously, I've been in the real estate community for a very long time and got to watching what other people are doing. That's kind of why we chose the path of kind of looking more at the multifamily side.
Very interesting. So you've really seen a lot of angles and aspects of the real estate business. I mean, from the fix and flips to really a lot of them are buy and holds also, right? You didn't flip all of them. Obviously, you said
Correct.
500 that you're either managing, and then you started the construction management, which we're dealing with all in-house, then the property management, and then the brokerage on that side, now building it out into multifamily and commercial acquisitions. So it's really a very well-rounded machine. And assuming you have a lot of team members that are helping make those wheels spin.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's the secret to anybody's success is finding people that do things very well that you don't necessarily do that complement your traits and find a way to collaborate, with those folks. I mean, collaboration is probably the world's biggest currency that we don't really value at this moment. But, collaboration is definitely a currency.
So I want to ask you, without having this being a paid consultation, which obviously it sounds like you do, but how do you find that many properties? I mean, we're talking about 5 properties a week on average. That means you're finding, going, turning. How do you find, I mean, without, obviously, if you're a broker, that works and you have a team of brokers finding the deals, that makes sense. But when you started out, like, how are you actually going about finding these deals?
So, I mean, the thing is, I think we lived this, right? We ate, drank, and slept this. We worked like, 12, 16 hours a day. And even when I left my oil and gas job, I never quit my schedule. My schedule is identical. So I would work, I left 12 or 16-hour days there to come and replace it with 12 or 16-hour days hunting real estate. So we did a lot of stuff. Driving for dollars is, a term that we like to call that. We found a bunch of properties that way. We had good, broker relationships where we had brokers looking for properties. Also, off-market deals were big for us, just word of mouth, telling people, hey, we're buying properties. Somebody walks in our office and said, do you buy properties? Yep, sure. Let's go look at it right now.
We got a big sign outside of the door that says we buy properties,
We never did. We buy the houses thing, but that's it. I think if you're passionate about something and that's what you want to do and you just speak it into existence, I think it'll come to fruition. So
I hear that. And you're in the Midwest, right? I mean, Missouri, is that still considered the Midwest?
Yes.
You guys pronounce it Missouri, right? But
I say Missouri, I think we had a discussion about this in our last big office meeting about which one it is. And the general consensus in our office was that it's Missouri. So,
okay. And so are you buying properties, exclusively local to your market within a certain radius of where you live? Or how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, Missouri wide for sure. We're in contract on another one in northern Arkansas. And so we're looking at definitely Missouri and Arkansas. Those are markets that we're already in. They're very, very familiar to us. We're very comfortable with those. And, we're looking at a lot of other markets too, but these Midwest properties seem to still have a lot of meat on the bone. So
what do you mean by meat on the bones? What does that mean to you?
yeah. So, I mean, we do this for a profit, right? So when we look at this, we have a pretty stringent underwriting criteria. We've underwritten thousands and thousands of deals over the past years, and if it doesn't kind of meet kind of our measures, then that's what we consider meat on the bone. Is like, can we make money on this property, or is it just doesn't pencil out? It's another.
So, I mean, you're trying to add value to these properties, trying to find they're either under market or you can, fix them up and bring them to a higher amount of market.
Yeah, if we're looking at value add play, or like this Northern Arkansas unit, it's obviously not really a value add play. It's
Mm-hmm.
thing was built in 2021, so it's not much value add there other
Right.
than just optimizing management, optimizing the next several years of construction management. And those optimizations will give us a little bit of spread there, but it's just a really super solid asset too. But on the value add side, that's really where we play ball. Like our value add side is, that's my strong suit, right? We want to come in there and say, like we're closing on a property, I think tomorrow, and this property, is like super under rented for this market. It's got like $500 spreads on the rent ranges right now. The rents haven't been changed in like 8 years. Doesn't have any leases on it. This is the type of property we're looking for. Total off market deal. Just got the property for for a really great price, and are able to come in there and do some light value add and really change the value of this thing.
It's so true. I mean, a lot of people talk about right now, the market is very difficult. Interest rates, have risen through the roof. The markets are kind of sideways in a lot of people's vision of how they see things. But it sounds like you guys are still crushing it, right? Finding deals, making it
Yeah.
happen. How do you do that? What are you doing differently than everyone else out? Not everyone, but many people out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's anything that I'm doing differently. I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade, right? And I think you learn a little tip and trick and along the way. And I think you can invest in any market, in any cycle, and you should be investing in all cycles. If you're not comfortable with investing in all cycles, I think you need to go back to your underwriting model and firm some things up. There are spreads in every market to be made, because houses still sell. People still have to have places to live. People still have to have places to rent. So I don't think it's anything that we're doing any different. We haven't really changed our model, over the past, 12, 14 years that we've been working on this model that we have. But we look at interest rates, obviously, and we factor those in. And if you're underwriting to all the known factors, then it's pretty easy to decide how to make a deal. And, you may have to go through 100 to find
Mm-hmm.
one.
Right.
I think that's probably the thing that ends up, mattering the most is like,
Yeah.
okay, this area doesn't make sense. Like there's some areas in Kansas City right now that don't make sense, but there are some other markets that really do.
I hear that. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, listen, there are people that deal with things in their way of doing things. And so when the interest rates rise, it's much harder to operate. It sounds like a lot of your business, especially the single family business, has been operating without really dealing with conventional loans at that rate. So that probably hasn't changed very much for you. But
Sure.
in terms of the commercial properties, many people buy things with the value add component, underwriting, hoping to add value and refinance, which that still can be done, but you just have to, like you said, look at a lot of deals and pencil the numbers and make sure it makes sense until you get there.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of put that into context, I was talking with one of our underwriters here yesterday, and since the beginning of the year, she's underwritten about 150 or 200 million in commercial assets, and there's less than probably 20% of that we're actually has gotten through. So,
Listen, that's a pretty good ratio, I would say. I mean,
yeah,
listen,
yeah,
people I talk to, they haven't found a single deal. So as long
yeah,
as you have one, if you're at
yeah,
zero, right? Zero is a 0% ratio. So
right.
you're doing better than most people in that regard.
And that ratio has been increased on off market deals. I think, broker opinions, and I can say this both ways because, we have a brokerage, the broker is always trying to sell, the thing at the highest price that they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's still some price fluctuation that may need to happen on
Mm-hmm.
that broker side, but we just haven't seen all that yet.
So as you've transitioned into more of the multifamily and the commercial space, are you considering, selling off any of the other businesses, the properties, or continue, are they continuing to function. And with that, I mean, have you been able to finally get some of your time back? Because it sounded like you went from 12, 16-hour days in oil and gas to 12, 16-hour days in real estate, when in fact, the goal was to get some time back.
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question, and yeah, so I've sold off quite a few of my SFRs over the past couple of years. Great time to sell, properties
Right.
had some great value increases. So we've sold off quite a few of those. And at some point in time, I think your biggest asset may become your biggest liability.
Mm.
And you know, I think we figured that out, about the time that COVID hit, and it really allowed us some time to slow down long enough to say, okay, well, here's some things that we should be doing. Here's some things that we're not doing because we're just too busy. And that was one of those, is saying, okay, we should probably not, our growth rate slowed down tremendously on how many units we were able to acquire
Mm-hmm.
on the SFR space. And we just, you kind of get tapped out there unless you want to. I mean, there's a lot that goes with that single family flip space, and it's just the operation side is very, very heavy. So
Right. You have to keep a lot of people, like you said, having the maintenance
yeah,
people, having the construction people on call. Like you said, it's a big payroll. And if you don't have the volume to support that, you really can't keep the machine operating at the same extent that it was. So you've looking to transition out of the single family space a lot and moving into that. And you got the cash flow hat. So, I mean, I got to ask you, like, what does that mean? What's that? I mean, obviously I know what cash flow is, but what does it mean to you? Like, what is so important that you're wearing the cap all the time?
yeah. So I mean, I had these cash flow hats made here not too long back, and I know lots of people have different ones, but cash flow is so important to me because whenever I was working oil and gas, I had to go in every day. I had to give them 12 hours for whatever, 12 hours, 16 hours, whatever days I was scheduled, which was typically, 13 days off one day or 13 days on, one day off.
Mm.
And then you started that rotation all over again. So, you're just working tons of hours and you have to give them those hours to get paid. Right.
Wow.
Well, me and my wife and kids sit down a few years ago and decide, hey, we're going to start, transitioning to vacation, and start taking more and more vacation all the time. So 3 years ago, I had to do 30 days a year still yet in oil and gas to keep my retirement account active.
Mm.
So I'd go out and do like a 30-day consulting job or something like that. And 3 years ago was the last, I was almost 100% vested. So it was my last 30 days that I had to do. And this was always like a big problem for me because they never come at a good time, right? So it's like you're doing 30 days and you've got 25 projects, that you're doing at that same time. So you're trying to manage those from someplace else. And so it took me 26 days. We went out, spent 26 days doing that. And then we took 56 days and then just traveled the rest of the time. Just had a
Right.
great time. Traveled from Yellowstone National Park all the way across the northern part of the United States, all the way up to Maine, and then all the way down to Florida,
Oh, wow.
actually, and met our team, our real estate team in Florida, and stayed there for a week. So, and it's been that every year. So we've started a tradition that every year we take our real estate office or our office team that works here on a vacation somewhere, that we haven't been,
That's so
and
cool.
go there and have a blast and spend a week, just enjoying each other's company, not talking shop. And so, yeah, I mean, it gives us that flexibility, right? That's what cash flow does for us. It allows us to, say, okay, well, this, we still have these jobs to do, but we
Mm-hmm.
have this cash flow that comes in that maybe if something happens today and we can't make it into the office until 10 o'clock, okay, super fine. Or maybe we don't even come to the office today at all. Maybe we work from the computer from Florida, which we've done a ton, or from, Charlotte, or whatever the case is, right?
Right.
So that's the flexibility that cash flows allows us.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the fact that you're going on vacation together with your team.
I think it's value.
That's huge. That's awesome. I think that's amazing for team, not only for team building, but the fact that everyone values each other's company, that they actually want to do that. A lot of jobs, no, seriously, a lot of jobs, people are like, I dread coming into work. And,
Yeah.
the last thing I would want to do is spend any more time, at the office or with the people at the office that I have
Yeah.
to. But I think it's really special. And it says a lot about you as the leader who's able to bring that type of culture and community together.
Yeah, well, I think it's super important. I spent many years of my life, just in a place that didn't seem like anybody cared. And you had to be there because you made a lot of money, and everybody was there for the exact same reason. That's because they got paid to be there.
Hmm.
And, that's kind of one of my questions here, as I'm starting to qualify somebody is like, what's the reason that you want to work here? Like our culture has to fit because we're really different. We don't run a 9 to 5. You have to clock in at 9. You have to clock out at 5. I mean, there's times that we'll just be sitting in here chit chatting and we'll look down and realize it's 9 o'clock. And it's like, oh gosh, we should probably go home. You know, let's go out and get something to eat and we'll go out and grab a bite to eat or whatever.
Right.
And I mean, our kids work with us. Everybody, has their kids in and out. So it's a really, really family environment with us. And that's really our goal is
That's
to
awesome.
keep it that way.
That's really cool. Where's one place, if you can mention, because you say you've taken a lot of vacations and now focusing on doing that a lot. Where's one place that you highly recommend if checking out a place you really enjoy the vacation?
Oh, I love Florida. I love the East Coast is beautiful, but I think the Rocky Mountains are just amazing. Every time I go back out there again, and I've been out there many times now, and it's just, they're so stunning. And every time I go there, it's something new. I never get tired of looking at that ever.
Yeah, it's majestic. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to be in. I
It is.
haven't really ventured up too high into the Rockies, but definitely been there and spent some time there and definitely know what you're talking about. I can relate to what you're saying. So that's awesome. I love the mountains. I'd love to transition now, Brian, to what we like to call the final four. These are four questions I ask all my guests. First question to you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Oh, the worst job that I ever had, definitely dishwasher.
That we've had that actually a couple times before. Can you want to elaborate on that? Was it at like a restaurant or a hotel or something like that?
So growing up, I grew up in a standard Midwest home, where both my parents worked. My dad's side of the family was always in the logging industry, and my mom's side of the family was always in restaurant service work. And so it was inevitable, that my grandma and my mom, kind of managed restaurants back and forth. And so the kids were always gonna, they were gonna work in there somewhere. So
Mm,
whenever I was about 14 years old, they started letting me wash dishes and I never really took it serious. They would pay me a couple bucks, and it was like, okay, I'm here anyways. I might as well do it. And then whenever it was like time to get a real job, I started washing dishes on the breakfast shift in this restaurant, and their breakfast shift was insane. I did not last at all. I actually got fired from that job. So
being fired at that such a young age. Wow.
I was about 14, 15, something like that at the
Yeah,
time.
that's not fun. Okay, second question for you. What's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Gosh, I'm a huge book reader,
Hmm.
love business books. My first year that I decided I was going to get out of oil and gas, I actually read 110 business books that year. I just blew through as many as I could get
Wow.
through. And, I think probably one that I recommend to every single person that comes into our organization is Rich Dad Poor Dad. You know, that book from a getting started standpoint, I think is very important.
Yeah,
And, we actually go back and we re-listen to that book as a family on a drive-in trip almost every single year. So
there you go. That's amazing. So important for what I love about that book is there are so many concepts in that are like so self-evident, but at the
yeah,
same time, nobody teaches them in
yeah,
schools. And if unless you have a rich dad, right, like the
right.
book, you're going to miss out on so many things like that. So, I know it's been mentioned on this podcast probably a couple hundred times at this point, at least a
Right.
hundred. I know at least 100 because I actually did last year at the end of what do we do, like the 300th episode. I did a tally of all the list of all the books. And I actually have that if anyone wants that available reading list from the first 300 episodes. Now we're up to about 360. And Rich Dad Poor Dad was like, out of 300 was like at 90 something, 92 or something. So it
Oh,
was
that's
definitely mentioned a lot, but for good reason. It makes a
yeah.
huge difference in a lot of people's lives. So I appreciate you mentioning that book. Third question is, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
So I'm actually currently learning to fly. So I'm going pursuing my PPL. So that's one that I'm still working on, still learning. So that's
Cool. Good for you. Like private, small,
yeah,
what do they call them?
private pilot.
Gotcha. Awesome. And you have your own plane yet, or that's in the works?
Yeah, I've looked at several, haven't bit that off yet. So
Help you get around to the properties.
yeah. Well, I know, I'm starting to travel quite a bit more. This year I've already flown probably 18 times.
Wow.
So there's people out there that fly a lot more than that, but I go to a lot of conferences and I fly quite a bit to look at properties and things like that. So it sure would help with that. Yeah.
Sounds good. And finally, Bryant, what does success mean to you?
That's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think from my side, success is, not necessarily monetary. I'm not a money motivated person. I think success from my side is time freedom, and I really do have that, even though I do work a lot. We love what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We spend a lot of hours doing that, but we spend a lot of hours having fun too. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss. And I think for me personally, that's what success is for me.
That's really important. Yeah. And I'm glad you've been able to build a life that has given you that freedom to be able to do what you want. And it's true. A lot of people think, well, what do you mean? You want the time freedom, but you're working so much. But the truth is, if you love what you do and your family's involved and you are providing for a lot of other people, like that's freedom in of itself. Right? You're choosing your own destiny. It doesn't mean time freedom doesn't necessarily mean the same thing for everyone. It doesn't mean you just never work again or just sit on the beach or you have a passion and there's something you're doing good, not just for yourself and your family, but for many other people as well. So I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, it really is. I had a good friend of mine that we were walking a property one time and we were kind of, just nonchalantly talking about retirement. I think I was about 27 or 28 years old at this time. And he's like, "So what are you going to do when you retire?" I was like, "I think I'll do real estate." And like we were already doing it, right? And he's like, "Okay, well, what do you do now?" I'm like, "Real estate." So I kind of feel like I'm pretty much retired, right?
Right.
So I love what I do. And I think that's what allows us to give our clients and our investors across the board, really good service. So.
That's awesome. Love that. Bryant, finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want?
So thanks to Mr. Yona here, I'm big on LinkedIn, love LinkedIn. So you can check me out on LinkedIn. And then also we have a website, ingramcapital.fund.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes for anyone who wants to check that out. Please connect to Bryant. Let him know that you heard him on the Weiss Advice podcast. And you too may get a cash flow cap from him. Who knows? Who knows? It might come in the mail. But really, Bryant, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time today and spending and sharing some really golden nuggets with us.
Well, I really appreciate it, Yona.
And to our listeners, thank you guys for listening all the way to the end once again. And remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.